Truth is setting us free. This is a podcast for those of us who want to be set free. Is that you? The basis for most religions is the practice of spiritual principles. However, in the name of religion, wars are being waged across the planet. The intention of this podcast is to take a step above religion by creating a personal relationship with Spirit, or the God of your understanding. These are some of the principles that are setting me and others free. Principles like peace, joy, gratitude, acceptance, patience, tolerance, forgiveness, compassion, and empathy, just to name a few. See if you can identify yourself in the stories that follow and how some of the most inspirational people in my life are practicing these principles and being set free. See if you can be set free through the practice of spiritual principles. I invite you to enjoy what follows.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Well, life is good.
Yes, it is, and very good. So, thank you for coming and engaging in a conversation about spiritual principles. The principle that we are discussing tonight is grace, and how grace has worked in your own life, how to put grace on the table so that other people can see it and use it for themselves. That's what we're looking for. That's our goal. So could you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yes, my name is Damon Powell, Dr. Damon Powell. I have a PhD in theology, particularly interdisciplinary connection between African American theology, art, and aesthetics. Currently, I consider myself an artist and a writer. Most of the writings and the art I produce are based around spiritual themes, or things connected to spirituality. I spent 26 years as a minister in the African Methodist Episcopal Church and retired last year. So no longer the Reverend Doctor, just Doctor. Also have done a lot of work in the community here in Oakland, particularly in the East Bay with HIV and AIDS. And I do consider myself a part of that community. And hopefully they consider me a part of the community as well. Have probably about 16 to 17 years experience there. And that is who I am, what I do right now.
Very good. So you have a well-rounded background. I love that. And especially as it relates to spirituality.
Yes.
I want to give a brief definition, very brief definition of what grace is. The spiritual principle of grace. A free and unmerited gift of kindness, forgiveness, and love. Would you agree with that definition?
Yes, I would agree with that definition, but I'd like to add more to it. I think, all those things are limited, but yes, I would agree for the most part.
Please add more to it. What would you add?
I'd like to add that also could incur gratitude, joy, even repentance, if you will. And that it can be extended to self and others. It isn't something that just comes from the divine, but it's something that we also extend to others and to ourselves.
And so grace comes through us to be extended to others and through others to us?
Absolutely. And through spirit.
from Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference between a gift that you've earned and one you receive without deserving?
I don't think if it's a gift that you can earn it. That's what makes it a gift, is that someone is extending it, or something is being extended toward you. You never have to earn a gift. You just receive it. It then becomes reward. And it seems like I'm picking with words, but language is important because it helps structure the way we think and see the world. So there's a very distinct difference there between a gift and a reward. A gift is something that is freely given, that is presented to you. Whether or not you need it or not is a different situation, different discussion, but it is something that is given without you having to earn it in any way. And that is absolutely a part of grace.
Do we know when we have received grace or not?
As with everything in life, I think it is contextual. Sometimes we're not in a position to see due to whatever things are going on in our own lives. And, we can get down in the dumps, depression, other things. We're not able to see the grace that is always abounding around us. That's why I wanted to include gratitude as part of my discussion of grace, because if we're not in a space to be grateful, it's hard for us to receive grace and or even extend that to others.
I understand. Yeah, I absolutely believe that grace is something that surrounds us, infuses us, and like love. How or have you ever been shown grace or kindness when you did not necessarily deserve it?
Oh, every day. Every day. If we want to just go from the basic traditional Christian perspective, every day. If we're looking at that model, if we want to go to more practical applications, we just have to go from the standpoint that none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes, whether it's just simply just driving in the car and you make a mistake and somebody honks at you, or maybe they don't. They let you go ahead and get in front of them even though you cut the line. That's an act of grace that's being extended to you because you did not deserve it.
I agree.
Daily, we have to experience that grace, but we don't pay attention to that. We take so many things for granted, I think, in life, that we forget about these aspects of these little, if we could say, micro blessings, micro extensions of grace that come to us all the time.
I believe miracles happen all the time, and grace is certainly one of the bridges that take us to the awareness of the presence of grace and the miracle that follows. So how does it feel? What does grace feel like?
Wow, now that's a very difficult one. I can only speak from my personal.
That's what I want, your personal.
Grace feels like an aspect of love. I think when we feel love, we also feel grace. We want to say that love is all-encompassing because love covers so many other emotions, but it's a feeling of being loved, a feeling of being accepted, a feeling of being appreciated. It's a feeling of being known, being, I think, held in high regard. I'd like to also add into our definition the idea of providence, because we think of this idea of being not only provided for, even though we may or may not feel as if we deserve to be provided for and given certain things, but also the fact that when you extend grace to someone or you feel grace, you feel that goodwill coming toward you. They desire for you to do well. They desire for you to feel well. So an example of that for me is just feeling that in my life when somebody does something really nice for me. Sometimes when somebody doesn't say something to me when I probably should have had something said to me, because we don't always present our best selves. Sometimes we just get up on the wrong side of the bed in the morning. Particularly if I miss my meditation in the morning, sometimes I can be a little grumpy. If I get too tired and begin to get snappy, and maybe people just like, okay, I'm not going to do this with you. That is an act of grace in its most simple terms. You know what? I'm going to give you a pass today because you're acting up, and I still wish you well. There's that providence, and I'm just going to give you this one.
Yeah. And that's generally for me a relationship that's based in love, one that I don't have any difficulty being vulnerable in, because it's being comfortable for me, and my uncomfortability is an act of grace. And I get to express that, just as you said, with members of the community, people that I come into contact with at the grocery store or at my doctor's office, or, any of those places.
I'd like to say, just to add on to that, I think in order to receive grace also, it requires that we step back from the ego, because the ego says to us, you're right, they're wrong. It says, you're fine. Everybody else is the problem. You haven't done anything wrong. And so we have to really step back from that ego and realize that we are imperfect beings, that we are not always on top of the game, that we stand in need of other people and their affirmation. As much as we like to say from the ego, I don't need anybody, I don't need anything, I'm self-sufficient, when that is one of the biggest lies of the ego that we can be told. We all need grace. We all need acceptance. And we all place ourselves in positions sometimes we might not necessarily, quote unquote, deserve it.
So, I'm hearing what we all need. And, many songs have been written about all we need is love. And I need a higher love. And what do you think forgiveness and love have to do with grace?
They're all hand in hand. I know that coming from the Christian tradition that I've come from, the whole idea of forgiveness plays a big part. We're talking about the role of Jesus and salvation, these other things, but also in order to deal with that, that also comes along with the whole idea of shame and guilt, which is not a model that I'm advocating anymore, but it has been a part of my history, particularly early on. And we all have done something for which we need to be forgiven for. And more importantly, that we need to forgive ourselves. Shame and guilt are killers just as much as stabbing somebody with a knife. It's just a lot slower sometimes, but it is spiritually, it kills us. And so to feel that extended to us, and sometimes it's not about spirit. I know for me, I know spirit is there. I think I have a very intimate connection with spirit, but sometimes you need to hear another person say those words. Mm-hmm. You just need to, or have another person extend that to you through their action, or sometimes even lack of action, by not saying something or not retaliating when they could have.
I got you. Yeah. So forgiveness, is it necessary to forgive yourself before you can forgive others?
Everybody likes black and white answers. I don't really do black and white very well. So if it seems like I'm circumventing the issue, I'm really not. I just like to kind of be more balanced in my approach to answering questions. So I think, I'm sorry, what's the question again? My mind is all over the place. I'm sorry.
Do you think you have to forgive yourself before you can forgive someone else?
I think there are degrees. We can extend it to others, but I think the more authentically and deeply we can forgive ourselves, the better we are at truly forgiving others. Because if you can't start with you and extend the compassion that you need, because there's another aspect of grace, is compassion. You cannot begin to extend grace to someone if you don't have any compassion for them or for yourself to be able to receive grace. This whole idea that we are all in need in some way. So it depends on the level that you can do. It depends on the degree that you have forgiven yourself, which means that we have to go back and do the work, which a lot of us, unfortunately, either don't do, or because of external circumstances in life, we're so busy trying to keep our heads above water that we don't have time to do a lot of that type of work, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that's what causes a lot of addiction in the community. We're not comfortable with being uncomfortable with ourselves as we do the work because it requires that we go within. And we want to keep the gaze outside of ourselves and see if we can arrange, or especially the ego wants to arrange situations and circumstances so that they turn out the way that we want them, you know. And what I found in my own life is that, you know, many times when things don't turn out the way that I want them to, grace steps in and they turn out better than what I could have possibly imagined, you know. Can you give me a situation in which you showed grace or kindness to someone else? What happened?
I'd like to think that there's a lot of them. I try to walk in my highest nature as much as I reasonably can throughout the day, but it's an ongoing work, as it is for all of us. I think most recently, an example, I was really mad at a friend of mine who asked me to do a commission for them, and they did not pay me, but they came and picked up the work. And they didn't tell me that they weren't going to pay me until they were already at my house picking it up. And I didn't do a contract with them because they were friends of mine. And I really didn't kind of want to do the project at all, but it was an anniversary gift. They really wanted, I gave them a big discount anyway. And I decided it wasn't worth it to ruin 20 years of friendship over this thing. And I really wish they had handled it better. I expect that from strangers, but I don't expect that from people who I call my friends.
Right.
To deal more forthrightly with me. I would have given it to them anyway, but it would have been nice to know. And I didn't need the money, thank God. So that's a grace that had already been extended to me, that I wasn't in a position where I was counting on the money, but it was the principle and the way that it was handled from someone who I consider to be a friend.
Yeah.
So yes, I had to extend a lot of grace, and it took me, I had to defend a little bit, had to work on it. You know, these things don't just come out of the box. I'm going to give you grace and then it's over. We have to kind of process. So it took me about 3 or 4 days to process a little bit. I also do EFT, emotional freedom techniques. So I had to do some tapping around it, but I was able to work it out and then come back to them from my higher self.
I got you. I got you.
Save the relationship.
Required you go into your own processing and take a look at what was going on with you. What does that look like? You know, do you have a ritual or a spiritual practice that helps you connect with spirit so that you can operate from your higher self?
I believe in having a lot of tools in the toolbox, because you never know what you're going to need at any given time. And sometimes you keep doing the same thing, it just gets stale for you. And so it's good to have other tools that you can go to and say, well, I'm going to come back to this, or I'm going to do this for a little while. Keeps things fresh, and different tools give you different perspectives. I definitely usually meditate almost every day. Twice a day, because I do a gratitude meditation at night before bed, usually about 5 minutes or so. I do it in the best. Sometimes I may fall asleep if I'm really tired, but just that effort, I'm going to sleep with that orientation in my mind. Also, I do a lot of journaling. There's a technique called visual journaling. So as an artist, that's very powerful for me. Sometimes I do a little chanting. I'm into yoga, and when you approach that from a spiritual approach rather than a physical, I'm getting a workout, that becomes a very spiritual experience. I do Tai Chi. I have a lot of the tapping. There's a lot of things that I'm kind of keying into. Those are the top things that I'm dealing with mostly now. But
Hmm.
there are other things that we can do. And I definitely am an advocate of talk therapy. It just takes so long. So if you're really not prepared to invest at least 6 months in that, I don't think it's really something that's going to give you enough benefit right away. So that would be my answer.
What would you suggest for someone who is new to practicing spiritual principles? How would you suggest that they go within? How to find themselves, their higher selves?
I think, first of all, I'm a very advocate of practical spirituality. We can talk all this and I can write all these books about spiritual principles, but if you can't apply it and make it work in your life, it's not going to do you any good. So I really believe in being very practical and starting small. And I think the most important thing is, though, is to commit to the process. I'm going to do this. I'm committing to this for whatever period of time, hopefully for my life. And that gives yourself some grace. It's like, I got more time to work on this if you're just committed. So you don't feel like you're under pressure. I got to do this every day. But start small. Experiment with some things so that you can find what works for you. Because what works for one person, some people just simply can't meditate, at least not in a sitting meditation, but they could do a walking meditation. They could be out in nature. So find the things that are working for you, but find at least 2 or 3 tools that you really feel can help you connect. And don't try to do it major. Just, I'm going to do 10 minutes. I'm going to do 5 minutes and begin to build up, but you're committing to the process and stop worrying about the results. This is a qualitative endeavor, not a quantitative endeavor. So it doesn't make a difference when you do it how many times, but the fact that you're committed to doing it. And as you do that, you want to spend more time on the quality. If you spend 5 quality minutes, it's much more powerful than doing something every day if you're not really focused in it, particularly when it comes to the spiritual.
Do you use mantras and affirmations?
Yes, sometimes. Sometimes I do.
Um, are they focused on particular issues, or do you have some that you use in general?
Usually if I'm going to do a mantra type thing, unless I have something specific I'm really dealing with, I kind of like to do those more guided. So I may put on something by somebody who's kind of already talking about some things. But a lot of times you will find as you begin to work in your practice that you think it's one thing and you start working on this. But if you get quiet long enough and you really get tuned in, everything that you were going to think about or go pray about or whatever, it doesn't matter. It all kind of gets worked out when you get that sense of peace, when you get that feeling of grace. When you reach that place, all this other, the details kind of don't matter anymore. They take care of themselves. If
Yeah.
you get still.
Be still and know. That's what one of the great phrases I think that comes out of the Bible. And know that God is everywhere, all the time, all powerful. I practice a spiritual um, program that takes me from the admission process and then through a process of recognition, of what my patterns are, and then taking a look at the defects of character, that I am engaging when I practice those defects, and what the spiritual principles are that can help me overcome them. And I also take a look at, what I'm doing on a daily basis and ask myself, similar to what you do, what was my day like today? Is there a need to make an amends? And if so, am I willing to do it? And if I'm not, give myself an opportunity to ask for the willingness so that I can free myself from the tether of disappointment and resentment and even betrayal sometimes. The situation that you described earlier, I've experienced something similar, and it felt a lot like betrayal to me, especially when it was somebody that I've known for a very long time and loved, you know.
Yeah.
But love does, it is the balm that um, I bring into whatever the circumstances might be so that I can get a better perspective, a higher perspective of what's actually happening, you know, because there's the story and uh, the facts, you know, and then there's the truth. And so, you know, I'm ultimately looking for the truth, the big T truth, you know, the ones that don't change. And for me, those are the principles. So grace um, opens up a lot of doors.
Yeah.
Um, do you believe grace has more to do with giving or receiving it, or balance, or both? I think you've said that it is giving and receiving, but how do you balance both? I guess that's the real question.
I think grace, along with everything else in the spiritual path, is a state of being. It's a way of being. And when you're in that place, it's like when artists say they're in the flow, or sports players say they're in the zone. These are all aspects of being in a place of grace, and things flow freely in and out, being unrestricted. And so it is both and, because we have trouble with that in our thought process. But a lot of times, particularly when it comes to spiritual things, it's both and. The answer is not A, B, or C, it's D, all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
All at the same time. And how do we begin to hold these seemingly opposite feelings, opposite situations in tension in a way that can come together and flow through us? Because oftentimes grace can be very epiphanal. At least it has been in my life. It will just be something that will flood through me. Sometimes even the course of the day, you could be driving, hear a song on the radio, and it reminds you to feel, it makes you think about, hey, I've received so many blessings. I've had such providence in my life, and even to the point where you could feel that the things that you thought were unpleasant at the time, when you look back at them now, those were acts of grace, because you were redirected to something else that at the time you didn't know that thing you wanted was not for your best interest. And so therefore, you were extended grace and you didn't even realize it. Sometimes it was painful to you at the time. So there's that giving and receiving. And because we have received, once again, then we are further able to give that out to others and extend that out into the world. And that comes from a place of being. And one thing that I think that I try to do that has really been helpful is that when I get those feelings, I try to do what I call just taking a snapshot. Let me just take a snapshot of what this experience is, what it feels like, and lock it into my mind, lock it into my spirit. And then I can draw on that when I'm not feeling so well, or when things are going bad, or when I'm angry. Oh, I remember that place. I remember what this feels like because I got all these snapshots. And it's easy for me to bring that back into where I am. But as with everything, we have to remember. If you don't remember to do it, you got to develop the muscle. Because then we go off into, my anger thing and all the other things that, have happened that are a result of not remembering.
Mm-hmm. And so, as you're talking about remembering, it reminds me that part of my spiritual growth has been deepening my awareness of the presence of spirit in everything that I do, everything that I say, actually. We sometimes say grace before meals. What does that mean to you, and how does it bring grace to our lives?
Well, now we're talking about energy, I think, in terms of in that sense, we're talking about energy and frequency. For one thing, it attunes us to a state of gratitude and makes us aware of the grace that is present in this instance in the form of food or sustenance for our body, which we need, so we can be grateful for that. But it also that's on the surface level, as you say, that's the facts. It leads us, it points us to the greater truth behind that. And that's really what that simple act of grace is, if taken seriously, because everything is a matter of your orientation. Are you saying it just to be saying it? Or are you really taking a moment to enter that space of being thankful and remembering that this grace has been extended to you, that you even had the means to buy the food, that it was provided for you if you went to somebody's house for dinner? Those little, once again, micro instances are what kind of tune us back to the spiritual, help us to tune back into that frequency that is always there. Frequency is always constant. It's just, are we in alignment with it? And to what degree are we in alignment with it?
So, tuning into a frequency, that frequency is accessed how? How
Well,
do you do it?
there are a variety of tools. I've kind of discussed it. There's all kinds of variety of tools that you can use to bring you closer to that. But this is, now we're talking science. Love has been proven to be a frequency. It's 500 hertz. That is the frequency of love, which they call
Really?
the universe. Yes, this is literal science. Everything has a frequency. They've been mapping these frequencies for different things, different emotions. Joy is actually even higher frequency than love, which a lot of people don't know. And so they're all around us. It's always there. It's just a matter of finding the right tool for you that will most readily and easily allow you to begin to tune into that, to shift your orientation. And sometimes it's simply just looking at the thoughts you're thinking. Are the thoughts that I'm thinking thoughts of grace? Are they thoughts of goodwill toward myself, towards others? Are they forgiving thoughts? Are they accepting thoughts? And even being aware of that can give us some type of shift. And then you have to intentionally, once again, we can say prayerfully, intentionally. I think prayer and intention are they intermingle, they overlap. So you can substitute my intention for my prayer and move further in that direction. Depends on how far we want to take it. And with anything, the more you practice, you strengthen the muscle, the easier it is to slip into that place more quickly, more easily.
Do you use tools like vision boards and doing visioning about what it is that you desire in your own life?
Yes, I have. I've also got some neuro-linguistic programming, things with frequencies and people talking about certain things that I also meditate to from time to time. Actually, now that you mentioned, I've been doing this 13-minute little thing by this lady that's a neuro-linguistic programming expert around the law of attraction. And it's called Destinite 131. And I've been listening to that every morning as part of my meditation for it. It's only like 13 minutes, so it's not a long thing. But really using those type of tools, I think, are important. Like I said, you need a variety of tools in your toolbox, because some days it's just not working for you. So then you can just do something like that. I don't have to figure it out. I can just sit down and put my headphones on for a few minutes, and that helps me to get to that place, because I'm not in it today, whether I'm just too tired, I'm too upset about something. Things happen in life. And so we need to be able to have the tools that we can access to get us where we need to go.
That's a beautiful tool. What's her name again, and what's the name of the program?
It's Destinite 131. The lady's name is, I want to say, Juliana Amos. She's Australian, so her accent is kind of thick. I'd have to look it up for you. I can send it to you, but you can go on YouTube even and find some of these things. I know a lot of times when I'm in the studio now creating, I definitely meditate before I work, and I consider my painting as part of my spiritual process. So this is another one of my tools, because a lot of times, most of my work, I'm working out my own stuff, and thank God, hopefully, a lot of times it will benefit other people when they see the finished product. But I'm working out my own stuff, my own visual journal of my spiritual journey. But I put on, just frequencies. Like we were talking about the hertz, there's stuff you can go on YouTube, the frequency of love, frequency of compassion, things that will clear blockages. And so I just put these on while I'm working now, while I'm painting, or when I'm writing in the background. And you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised that the subliminal effect it has on you over time. Everything is about time and quality. I think, when we're talking about the spiritual realm. Did that answer your question?
I believe it did. Yeah. I understand the answer. So, yeah, when we deal with the spiritual, what I've learned about spirituality is that many times my ego will tell me that I should expect certain behavior from the people in my life, certain people in my life, especially those who I'm close to. And when I don't have those expectations, um, let's just say the expectation creates a problem in itself, because now I'm making assumptions about how that person should respond to me. What I've learned to do is to recognize that the love that I'm looking for, and that's usually what that expectation is about, looking for love in some form, that my spirituality tells me that the God that I love loves me however it wants to. I can remember, situations with my family and friends where I thought that, the way that they're treating me doesn't reflect the love that I was expecting, to get from them. The other part of that is I have to turn around and ask myself, well, where are you doing the same things? How are you showing up in other people's lives, and not really being clear, about who you are in the relationship, or who you are, period. Most people don't really take or assess who they are in a given moment, because I think our lives are fluid, but we have in our minds this image of who we think we are. And many times that is so far from what other people may have as the person that we truly are. So it's interesting how Spirit has given me an opportunity to see how grace can work through perfect strangers.
Mm-hmm.
I am so grateful, to know that my family of origin, may not be able to provide the kinds of support and love that I may be expecting, but somehow the spirit of love shows up through others. The question is, am I able to receive it? Mm-hmm. So have you been in situations where it's been difficult to receive grace and love?
Yes, absolutely. One actual situation was not too long ago that I had a friend, and we were really at odds. It seemed like we were kind of really just growing apart. People change.
Yeah.
We assume everything is supposed to be, you're my friend, we're gonna be friends forever. But it doesn't always work like that. And they opted to, we had got into a big disagreement about something. It wasn't a yelling or anything like that. We were just really like at odds. And they opted to discontinue the friendship. And I was really shocked and hurt by that. And it took me a while to really realize that it was for the best, and that's what they felt they needed to do at that time. And there was an act of grace in that I didn't see at the time. I wasn't able to see it because I was too focused on the relationship, but they were actually extending me an act of grace by opting not to put either of us in this position again, at least not for a while. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Rather than let this continue to keep bumping heads and deteriorate into something else, they had the wisdom and the foresight to say, you know what, this is an act of grace. I'm going to extend to preserve whatever is still left of this by saying, let's not do this anymore. And am I making sense?
Yeah, you are.
And so, a lot of times, as you said, the blessing is there, the grace is there, but we just have to be looking to receive. Sometimes you got to find it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really have been focusing a lot too in the last 4 or 5 months on this idea of nothing happens to me, everything happens for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to look to where that for is. And it's not a matter of pie in the sky or not seeing any problems or not seeing anything wrong, denying reality. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about looking towards the open door, because there's always a door that's open. There's always an upside, however small. And a lot of times it's actually pretty big if you're willing to look at it. But if we get so focused on what's going on, we don't see the grace that's being extended through this redirection. It's
Mm-hmm.
really all just being redirected. It's not
Yeah.
a no, it's not a failure, it's just a redirection.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Do you,
trust that
go
God's
ahead.
providence and God's grace or Spirit's grace will guide you to the place you're supposed to be, even though it seems like that's not where it's taking you now, or this is a setback.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you think there are circumstances and situations that have been given to us so that we can uncover the places that we need to practice love and grace?
Yes, without a doubt. Everything. God wastes nothing. Spirit wastes nothing. You can look at that at the world around you. Nothing is wasted. It all gets recycled. It all gets used for something. Nothing is just randomly here just to be here. Everything, you may not understand the purpose or know it, but as we delve deeper into traditional science, quote unquote, we're seeing that everything in nature has a purpose, however minute or however, and really the things that seem the least important are actually the backbone, the infrastructure for everything else. Particularly, we're talking about cells, we're talking about even viruses. Without these things, we're finding out that we can't sustain life. And we're killing the planet and we're killing these biosystems. And now we realize these are the backbone, which we thought were insignificant. So I'm saying all that to say that yes, all these things are important. Nothing is used, nothing is wasted, everything is used, the same thing in your life. But once again, you have to look to the open door.
Uh-huh.
A lot of times we're so focused on what we've lost or the idea of loss and our fear of the unknown, our fear of the future, and our agenda we place. We think it ought to go this way. And the biggest part of, I think, spiritual growth is learning more to let go, to release and trust that it will be well. Trust in grace that God is for me. God is always for me. Love is always available. Love is always there. I never have to earn it. I never have to be worthy of it. I just need to be open to receiving it and trusting that it is there and that I am already worthy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's nothing I can do to be worthy anyway. So why exercise futility? But because I received it, I have responsibility to then be the best that I can be, or at least endeavor to.
Yeah. Yeah. So how can understanding grace as a remedy to our own lived life, um, mistakes, help to foster kindness and humanity? How can understanding grace as a remedy? There's wars and all kinds of disagreements, and then we have our political stuff going on right now. Humanity is in a place where we definitely need some grace at this moment. How would you use grace as a remedy for some of the things that we may be experiencing in the moment? And even in your own life, it doesn't even have to be, as it relates to humanity. You are humanity.
I believe, and I firmly believe this, that spirit works from the specific to the general. And so as we change ourselves and work on ourselves, and in turn extend that then grace to others, it influences. You read about the Bible, it talks about people coming to Christ. Well, this person watered, and I did this, and next thing you know, they're in a better place, for lack of a better term. So I believe that we as individuals have to do our work, because we are part of the collective, as you said. We're all in this together. We're all connected, whether we choose to acknowledge that or not. And I think oftentimes we forget that, because we put up all these little silos of my race, my country, my people, my political party, but we are all connected. And what affects one will eventually affect the other. And I think as we become a more global society, we're seeing that more and more, particularly during COVID, the supply chain issues, for instance, what affected somebody over there, you think, oh, that has nothing to do with me, that's way over there. And then now all of a sudden you're lacking things that you need or want because of something else. And so being able to see these connections, but we have to do that as an individual level. On the micro level, that's where we can really relate to it, right? Because we can't ascend up here. We have to start where we are, which is with us as individuals. And as we move that out and other people catch on, then we extend the wave. And pretty soon, everybody gets to a certain level.
Do you think we'll all advance to a level of consciousness that we are totally aware of the presence of spirit within and without?
I'm optimistic, but I'm optimistic, and I like to think, yes. Will it be in our lifetime? Absolutely not. Would be, maybe another 1,000 years. Yes. But I think the real problem, well, it's not even a problem. It's that's part of the grace of it too, is free will. There will always be persons and beings who choose to exercise their free will in ways that are antithetical to the well-being of themselves and or the collective. Whether we're talking about spiritual beings or we're talking about people, that's always going to be there as long as they have the choice to do otherwise. So do I think the majority? Yes. Do I think that will become the instances that are not so good, things that are not happening, will become more aberrations and not the norm? Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. So the work has to start with us, no matter what. And so the individual then expressing peace, expressing grace and charity, bring on the atmosphere that we can all use to develop into our highest level of consciousness. I really get that, So cultivating grace, you've pointed to one of the sources of the transformation, which is to look within and to take care of whatever issues we might have. But there are levels of grace. Do you think that we will get to a point where, I don't know, sort of like an experience where there's enough people that we can turn things around? Can we collectively direct our consciousness in a way that heals the planet?
Yes, it's already happening. I firmly believe that it's already happening. I think we can, what do they call that, the 99th monkey or whatever that theory is, where if you get enough people, you kind of build a
critical mass. That's what
critical mass. There you go. Thank you. Thank you for helping me out. Yeah, so I think that we can. I think actually that it's already happening. more so today, I think, than any other period in history that I can be aware of. I think that people are asking those questions. People are starving, thriving, starving, looking for some type of spirituality. Now, they're not looking for the traditional quote unquote models, oftentimes, such as the church, such as the mosque, but they are asking these questions, and people are having these experiences. And a lot of times they don't have the tools or the skills to ask the right questions about them that make sense of them and understand them into their life. And so they need people like, for lack of a better term, ourselves who are already on the path to help them understand and contextualize what's going on with them and what the meaning of these questions are. They may not frame them in a spiritual framework. Even many people who say that they're quote unquote not spiritual or whatever, they have these experiences and they're asking these questions. They're just asking in different ways, and we have to be in tune to what are they asking and providing them with a solution or some insight in a form that they can receive it in.
Yes.
Am I making sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. I have people that I mentor, and what I've learned is that it's the questions that you ask that help direct them to the places where they might not be able to see what's going on. And I may have a vision because I'm a little bit further down the road of awareness and realization. So yeah, I can definitely understand, how important it is, for us to not only hear the questions that they're asking us and asking others who are aware, but also what they're not asking, because many times, like you said, they don't know what to ask, to get to the source of their problems.
Sometimes it's just providing another perspective.
Yes.
Because all of us, we get so engrossed up in our thing and our way of seeing the situation, the problem. We just need somebody to say, well, I said this way. And we're like, damn, you know what? Maybe I need to look at that. We may not do it right at the moment, but it may be 2 days later, or you come there like, you know what, maybe I need to, take this in mind.
Yes. Sometimes it's the messenger. The ego will say to me, even if I know that this is some information that is good for me, or the question is one that really reveals, a lot of what it is that's in my subconscious, the underlying issues that I might not be able to see on my own. Other people are my eyes and ears, and they can reflect what they see inside of me, and that gives me an opportunity to examine what it is that they're pointing at, and then accepting it, and then applying whatever principles are necessary and tools are necessary for me to move past whatever I may be experiencing in the moment. That is truly a gift. That is the grace of God, yes, operating in my life. Anything that brings me out of denial, oh my God.
Your enemy is your teacher, brother.
That's right. That's right. It is, and so I was watching a movie one time, Will Smith movie. It's called Collateral Beauty. Have you ever seen that movie before?
Great movie. Great movie.
Oh my God. The whole premise is about being conscious, being aware, of the gifts that even tragedy brings to our lives, and recognizing the beauty, and how even in situations like earthquakes and storms, the good people show up. We just had parts of Hawaii burning. And, in every situation, there are people that show up and respond to those circumstances, and they're there to save the lives that they can. And even for the people that pass away in those experiences, there's grace. And, what I recognize today is that to be absent from this body is to be present with the God of my understanding. And so what it does for me is it lifts the fear of living. It gives me an opportunity to see that the world is my oyster, and I get a chance to explore it. And my higher power is exploring the world through me and as I bring the love that it is into the experiences that I'm having on a daily basis.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because Spirit often speaks to me through movies all the time. Sometimes when I think I shouldn't be watching, I'm like, should I watch it? I actually pray about it. I'm like, yes. And then I start watching something and I get these breakthroughs. I get these moments of grace, of the insight into the human condition or to my own situation, or somebody will just say a phrase in the movie that just triggers me. So we get these breakthroughs that God is always speaking. God never stops communicating. The only question is, are you in the space to receive? It's always there. So thank you for bringing that up, reminding me of that. Even the most mundane things, there is a lesson there if we are in the right place to see it.
Yes. And even in the passing of relatives and the sickness that may be experienced, during that period when we had people dying every day from HIV, those were dark days. And it got to the point for me where it was just, I couldn't do another memorial. But as time went on and I started to realize one of the biggest gifts was not the people that had passed away, but the people that were still a part of my life, how I could show up in their lives in ways that really expressed the love that I had for them. Because some of those people that passed away, I did not have the opportunity, didn't know how, actually, to express the love as they were making their transitions. Today is a different day. And I'm really grateful for the grace that has opened up the opportunity for me to see deeper into this experience we call life.
Yeah.
So,
and even death can be a form of grace, particularly when periods of extended illness and pain. That is a grace.
It is.
And that's why we should do another one to talk about beauty, because there is a beauty even in that, the beauty of a good death, a beautiful death. Sometimes the grotesque and the absence of beauty makes the presence of beauty that more appreciated, that more evident. But that's a whole other discussion. We should come back and talk about beauty sometime.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I want to be cognizant of your time, and I really want to thank you for this opportunity. I really have enjoyed having this conversation with you, but I don't want to keep you on the in this discussion all night. Like you said, there more will be revealed as time goes on, and as we sit and talk longer, things will come up that reveal this thing called grace in a myriad of ways. So I just want to give thanks again to the idea of grace and your suggestion, to talk about this very important principle. And, the Course in Miracles says that nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. You know, knowing that these principles are the things that never change has given me some peace. And the more I reflect on these spiritual principles, this project that I'm doing right now as it is, the more I realize the peace that God can bring within us, through us, as us, through our communities, and through the world. This is a place where we get an opportunity to release those things that don't appear to be love. And it is grace that makes those things vanish and the light comes through. You know, this dichotomy that we live in as human beings.
Yes. Yes.
You know, there's shades of gray.
That's right.
You're right. It's not black and white, you know.
Very rarely.
So thank you, my brother, and
Thank you.
have a wonderful rest of the week. Is there anything that you'd like to say in closing?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for thinking of me. Thank you for this opportunity. I've enjoyed myself immensely. I probably talked too much. The preacher in me probably came out, but thank you for the opportunity. And I look forward to hopefully getting some feedback from some of your folks. After this goes out, I would love to hear your feedback. Please, folks, put comments, write thoughts, below the video, whatever's going on. We want to hear from you. I definitely want to hear from you. This is a conversation we need to start having. This is part of creating that critical mass that we're talking about, particularly within our communities and those people of color, people of other genders, etc. So that's what I would say, and ashe.
Ashe, and so it is. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening. I'm grateful for the opportunity to give you an insight into how we may practice these principles in such a way that freedom comes to each of us. It's a commitment that I hope each of you can make to this practice that I know has set me and others free from the chaos and the confusion. Thanks for listening.